badges at the registration desk front so that we can recycle. And then you need taxis. It's walkable to the train station. So you don't need, unless you brought a lot of posters and stuff to carry. Let me know now, and I will look at that. And then there's evaluation sheets, there are the yellow forms in the packets. If you want to leave those at the registration desk as well. After this bit, we'll be having coffee at 2:30.
Are we done?
We're going to have one taxi at quarter to 4. So that's my goal.
Okay, just
Move on again with the final preliminary part of the day. We're pleased to have David Beard, the Senior Policy Advisor for Learning and Teaching, Research Funding Council, who's going to give us a policy perspective on these issues.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, great. Well, I hope you found today's session useful, and this is a kind of event that you will recommend to your colleagues. What we'll do today is just give you a perspective on these issues from the Funding Council's point of view. Some of this will necessarily repeat a little bit of what some other speakers have said, but I'll just go over some of that stuff. And I wanted to start by just highlighting some that's in the corporate plan. I'm sure you've already corporate plan. This is within the overall aim of what's aim 7, I think, which is about Scottish colleges and universities being effective world-class organisations. And just to unpack world-class, what do we mean by that? Well, there is a competitive environment for education. What we're competing on, well, we're not competing on price, essentially. We're competing on reputation, what's distinctive about Scotland. And I think there's scope within the Sustainable Development Agenda to say something that's distinctive about Scottish education and why we might want to study here. And of the two objectives we have there, the first one, well, I won't read it out, but for me it's important because I suppose there's something in corporate plans we often tend to conflate a lot of issues down to a small number of bullet points. Well, in the first bullet point here, you do have, we're talking about the financial sustainability of institutions. It also talks about human, physical environments and resources. And for me, that's very important because it says for a long time that maybe to some economists, the role of the environment somehow that was kind of an optional extra. And this is really saying, well, this is a key part of the economics that is core to its role doing. And the second objective is really just to note that our actions here are reflected in the Executive Education and Sustainable Action Plan, which is wrapped up in the Scottish Executive's Learning for a Future strategy. So the rest of the talk will really just take you through the different elements of our strategy and what we're doing on each of those. I suppose the first thing to say is that we really want to embed this both in the business of institutions and the business of organisations that we work with. And we don't want to confuse universities and colleges with having to go to lots of different places for different information. Try and embed us within the services and people that they usually go to for advice. So we're working with the Higher Education Academy, and you heard from Simon and other colleagues about various things that they're doing. And also today, I'm very pleased that this is a joint effort, this conference between the Higher Education Academy and the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges. Because obviously there's an academic learning and teaching side to this, there's an estate side, and I think it's all about bringing the whole thing together in a holistic manner. So I think it's really important that we have this particular group of people today and these organisations. Now these are organisations that we're working with. There's some funding that goes to these organisations. I think from your perspective there will be other parts that you want to work with. People like the Association of University Directors of the States, the Scottish Sustainable Development Forum have been very helpful to me in terms of having policy discussions within a wider context of colleagues from further and higher education and others. So just looking at the role of some of these people. In the Higher Education Academy work, as you know, the Academy comprises its subject centres and some generic aspects to the work. And I think it's really important that as well as the subject basis, because this is such a cross-cutting agenda, that some of the work the Academy has been doing is about interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary and so on. And whilst we would hope and expect that what the Academy does at the UK level is useful to Scottish universities, I'm very pleased that there's been the time and money found to fund these projects in Scotland. And across the three projects, which I've just heard about in the last week or so, we do have these three different areas of focus. There's something that's about developing a particular subject. There's a project which is about perhaps a generic approach which can be applied to any subject. And there's something which is explicitly about addressing these interdisciplinary components. So I guess I'm satisfied across the range of things that the Academy might be doing. There's something happening in each of these kind of dimensions. But there's an issue about future priorities. There's only so much the Academy can do, there's only so many conferences and so on that you'll have time to come from, so many reports and so on we're able to read. So I'm interested to hear whether we're hitting the spot with this kind of stuff, or there's other things the Academy might do in terms of dimensions to this issue that we haven't tackled yet, or whether the focus is about, well, we've got the dimensions right, it's about broadening out to involve people that haven't perhaps been touched by this yet. So looking forward to hearing your views on that in the panel session at the end. EAUC, I guess you'll be familiar with the kind of work that they've done. They have published guides already on campus biodiversity, waste management, hazardous waste. There's the beginnings of a community of practice on education for sustainable development from the EAUC website. Aaron Steve has been kicking that off. And I think that's very important because obviously EAUC is interested in the state's issues, but they're interested in learning and teaching how the whole thing comes together. And if I could make a plea, it's really just that people in the Higher Education Academy and the EAUC continue to work together on that nexus so that there isn't duplication, there's actually synergy, and I think that would be a useful way forward. One of the main things that EAUC does from the Council and from the Executive is to run the Campus Sustainability Programme in Casper, which we really wanted that to turn into a one-stop shop for advice and guidance on sustainable development. And I think one thing that's important for us is this is about sharing best practice between peers. So it's not about top-down guidance that anybody's particularly saying we've got the right idea. It's about you sharing good practice amongst yourselves. And that's quite an important characteristic we would like to retain. So there have been a regular series of Casper workshops and seminars looking at things like sustainable construction, energy performance, socially responsible investment, biodiversity, sustainable procurement, transport management, and so on. The people involved in managing that programme are currently looking at what the priorities are going to be for the year ahead. Just to take a quick look at the kind of things we're thinking of. More web-based resource materials and guidance, looking at the issue of recycled content and construction projects, and come back to that issue later, and a study of environmental assessment methods and development of guidance on that. There will, I think, be more practical themed workshops on these issues. And I went to one just last week, or 2 weeks ago, on the sort of community aspect of sustainable development. For me, that could be better attended in terms of universities and colleges coming along. And that just puts a question in my mind about whether we're hitting the spot with these seminars, or whether seminars is the right model. Perhaps you'd like to hear about practice through some other mechanism. So that's the work programme. We're interested in views on that. And I hope it's clear from that that we've tried to set up through these different agencies, tried to really touch all the bases across all the different dimensions of this issue. Now we are doing a lot of other work on the states issues, and I should perhaps say I work on the learning and teaching side within the council. That's my specialism. I don't work so much on estates or on research, but I will try and cover these in this talk because I think it's important to consider these things around. You'll probably know about some of the major estates projects we've funded. So King Margaret University has a new campus out in East Lothian. It's been built to sustainable development principles in terms of the construction, but there's also some interesting stuff around transport policy in terms of railway station being built as part of the campus, and also looking at the use of thin client in terms of the IT infrastructure and whether that's a mechanism for saving energy. The other two examples are from the college sector, John Leake College and Easterhouse. I think one of the distinctive things they're doing is really blurring the boundary between where the college starts and the community starts. And for a lot of people, if you think about wider access, sometimes institutions can be quite imposing and not particularly people who normally access learning. I think John Leake has done an awful lot of really good things that people might come in to use the library or the swimming pool or some other service and find all of a sudden they're involved in college, but their own programs. And through their learning centres to actually try not just to give people qualifications and send them to the city centre, but actually to keep them within Easterhouse websites and other things to support local community development, so to support the people that are closest to the college. The Lorna College, again a building built to sustainable development principles, and a focus there, I think, on providing as close as possible a real environment, a real working environment for disabled people with special needs within that facility, and also looking at bringing people from construction trades within this building, which is a magnificent building, and I think says a lot about sustainable development construction principles, but to give joiners, plumbers, stonemasons, CPD within that environment, and that's making a big difference to local companies and how they're operating, sourcing materials, and working with people in those communities. So on those three projects, we've decided to pilot our post-occupancy evaluation guidance. There's clearly a lot we could pull out from those projects. Experience in terms of sustainable development could be shared with other people. And quite often it's a feature of campus projects, there's a lot of thought goes into getting it done, and as soon as people moved in, well, it's done and we don't have to think about it. So we're really keen to follow up a lot more on the post-project evaluation. What was the experience once people got in the building? So we funded some research really to try and pull out what were the sustainable development lessons that we could pull out from those particular projects. Another thing we've reflected on is that we published some guidance in 2006 to inform, SD in estates projects. We had some feedback that in some ways that didn't quite hit the spot. A lot's happened since 2006, and there's a particular need for senior managers and estates professionals, maybe something a bit shorter, focusing on some key messages and so on. So we've asked consultants, third wave, to work on that and revise guidance we have this autumn, hopefully to inform future estates projects. We've had more direction from the Scottish Executive. We mentioned recycled content in construction projects. It's going to be a new directive which is really around the proportion of recycled content that appears in tender specifications for building projects and that kind of stuff. So we'll be circulating that information to the sector in terms of what we're looking for in terms of new specifications for projects. And support on that will be available from the Waste and Resources Action Programme RAP, something I'm familiar with. And again, action from the Executive on Energy Efficiency, the Central Energy Efficiency Funds. There's going to be £4 million available there for colleges and universities, which is really to help people think about saving energy, think about minimising the carbon footprint for both of those things, to actually use that investment to save money for universities and colleges. So it will probably operate as a loan fund, and we're still working through the conditions of grants so associated with that. And we'll watch out for that in the next year or so. So I think it's clear we can design better buildings and save money and be more energy efficient and so on. But how can we ensure that institutions, in terms of students and staff, are making a positive impact on the communities? And I guess there is a point of view that says, when students come to town, this is the kind of stuff we get. There's fast food, there's litter, traffic cones appearing in unusual places and so on. Well, that's a perception that some people have, and perhaps it's true of some of our students. how can we turn that more into these kind of things? Happy students, volunteering, hard at work. A cup of tea in this particular picture. But that kind of thing. How can we integrate people, maybe stuff that contributes to degree programs, working communities, working around the campus on biodiversity work, and that kind of stuff. Now that's a dimension in the action plan that, to be honest, we're still working on. We're still looking to your ideas. I've got some Casper seminar recently. I'd be very interested to hear ideas from yourselves of what we could do there. It's not a new idea. There have been reports previously to Universities UK around the idea of studentification. Think particularly about experience in places like Manchester, where you have very transient student populations of anything up to 100,000 people coming to the city, leaving again, not having any particular attachment to the place. How do you deal with that? What's the impact on local neighbourhoods? And perhaps the route is something around university partnerships with local authorities, something around that. But I'm interested to hear ideas on that. Another area I guess we're still working on is that we have funded all this amazing research which is going on. I think Scotland's very strong in terms of the contribution it's going to make, environmental research, sustainable development research. There's a question in my mind about how do we make the most of that in terms of how it's informing undergraduate teaching. I'm sure that staff involved in these projects have got the ability to recite people in the way that researchers always do. They're at the cutting edge of the discipline. But maybe there's issues for opportunities for student placements and some of this stuff. I don't know. There is a quality enhancement dimension to this, which, if you're familiar with our setup in Scotland, we have a number of enhancement themes we're taking particular focus on this year. And one of the themes that's currently taken forward by Andrea Nolan is about the whole issue of research teaching links. And that's getting into issues of how do we encourage more autonomous learners at quite an early stage in courses, how do we get focus on research skills and so on at quite an early stage in courses. So that theme will report in 2008, and I think there's an opportunity to get some ideas from yourselves about maybe how we work with what's coming out of that theme, go with the grain of some other ideas around autonomous learners, linking in with some of this research work that's going on. Finally, just to let you know what's happening in Scotland's colleges, this is obviously a higher education focused event. I think there's a few people from colleges here. There will be an event for colleges later on this year. Just to let you know, issues around curriculum are quite difficult in higher education. It's certainly difficult for anyone, either from a government point of view or perhaps even centrally within university management, to take a view about what actually happens within departments. Further education, very different context. There is something approaching a national curriculum in terms of courses from SQA, and SQA have recently published guidance on how you might embed sustainable development in courses. So this is guidance to unit writers. As units come up for review, people will be asked to reflect on what the opportunities for integrating sustainable development in courses. So that's been a really good move from SQA. What we've done is we've given some funding to the Scottish Further Education Unit to support colleges in responding to that guidance, to compare between subject areas about how was it for you, what ideas do you have, and to work with subject networks and communities of practice that SFU support to take that forward. And there's maybe a challenge there. I don't know if maybe some people might think universities have been running with this for a few years, and maybe colleges have got a bit to catch up. You might see in a few years that college courses across the piece are really far more evenly integrated sustainable development practice you might find in universities. And within Scotland, where we have a lot of learners on articulation courses moving on to universities, well, how would it feel if you got a certain experience at college that wasn't then effective when you moved on to universities? So we've heard already today the issue about schools and equal schools and needing to join that up. Well, I think there's a need for some discussions between colleges and universities, particularly around articulation, to make sure that the messages are consistent. And finally, just to finish up and let you know what's been happening internally with the Funding Council, about 18 months ago we worked with local consultants and National Capital to look at developing a strategy within the Funding Council for how we can improve the sustainability of our own operations. So we do have a strategy, we do have targets, and it has been about reducing the use of cars, paper and energy and so on, increasing use of public transport. So I'm discouraged from taking taxis and to take the bus, which I'm late for your meeting, that might be why. Increasing use of video conferencing for meetings, more recycling, energy efficiency, and so on. We are mindful that as a public body we've got duties on biodiversity. We're in a city centre location, you know, but there are things we can do in terms of kind of products we're buying, what we're still about, all this kind of stuff. So we are looking at more sustainable procurement in terms of our office supplies and nothing else. I could report some modest successes with some of these things. We're using about 15% less fuel than we were last year. But what I have noticed is difference in just the awareness, behaviour of my colleagues, just through simple things like turning your morning shop and recycling. And I wouldn't say that's common across the piece, across all of my colleagues, but it has made a big difference. And it makes it a lot easier for me taking this policy agenda forward with the people I'm sitting around the table with, and maybe has some impact on the personal work experience. And if it's of any value to you, maybe that's a route for universities. If you can set some corporate target that might be about fairly simple to understand things, but where it has an impact on individual behaviour across the piece. Well, universities often have difficulty being corporate about anything since, you know, to some extent faculties are independent and so on. But if you can agree with some corporate targets that have effect at the individual level, I think that's quite powerful. Okay, well, I think that's enough for me. I hope I've covered all the things you'd be interested in. If not, a chance to ask questions at the end.
Thanks very much, Craig. We're going to move very swiftly on that. Shirley Miles from the EAUC is going to give us a talk about the EAUC and the work in Scotland, please, and then she's going to share our final discussion session.
Well, my presentation works, so hopefully I've got some highlights on this slide that I'm going to use. Thank you very much. Yeah, just very, very briefly, a little bit about the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges. Great to be putting on this event with the HEA. It's definitely a relationship that we can continue with the see such huge benefits. The EAUC has now been established as a charitable company. We were set up in 1996. We've got well over 200 members of further and higher education, and lots of associate members, including consultants and suppliers, etc. The value of being a member-led organisation gives us quite a lot of strength in terms of not being project funded, so we're not all the time just being told what to do because we're chasing lots of funding. So we feel very strongly that we've been more recognised as a voice and as a champion for the HE and FE sectors. It was interesting that the discussion revolved around the link between estates and curriculums as if these were two very separate areas. I think when I've only very recently taken over as national convener, when I first became a member, it was very much an estate-led, driven organisation. Various estates would get together to talk about energy and recycling, and it was very much figures focused and estates focused. And over the last couple of years, there's been a huge shift, which is great for me because I'm an educator and I teach, and that's fantastic. But as an organisation, it's become a really important strength, and anyone that was at the conference recently, I think, really picked up on this change in ethos and emphasis for us as an organisation. Much more holistic, much more education and curriculum focused, which is fantastic. I think what's come out of today has definitely been this link, the importance of the link between curriculum and estates. Roddy next door said we don't really tend to do too much navel gazing, thinking about what's the same done is. We just get on with it. How fantastic within the same institution. You do have some people doing a bit of navel gazing as well. It's nice to bring these two together. So we're managed by elected trustees, but we do have a national office with staff, which again has become a great strength for us. And we are aiming to improve the environmental and sustainability progress of FHE generally, to provide support and guidance, the various guides that have been mentioned here, campus, biodiversity, etc. But also, one of the networking, this is a networking event, one of the networking tools has been the GIS grants that we have. I don't know if any of you are on the ESD one, but it's certainly become one of the most active networking tools that we have, and that's been great to see as well. So, as well as what we we do in terms of providing the opportunities for networking and providing sector-specific advice and guidance. We've also got the linking to the EP Green Gown Awards, which had curriculum there for the first time this year, which I think was useful to see, and has raised curriculum up the agenda a little bit. Again, taking it away from just we're doing great things on the campus. So current projects are working with the business and the community indices and looking at how helpful and useful they are in terms of benchmarking institutions, eco-campus environmental management systems again. We've also got the CASPA Campus Sustainability Programme, which is also specific to Scotland. Now, John Foster and Linda Burton, who are the consultants working on the project, will be around afterwards if anyone wants a bit more information about that, because I'm not entirely sure if you can tell what it stands for. And David Sunwell, who's the Secretary for EAUC Scotland, is around as well. Scotland EAUC branches got a life of its own, which is fantastic. It's very different in terms of how it's set up, links to funding councils. There seems to be a very different flavour up here to how this work is done, which is fantastic. As a national organisation, we do need to think about how we communicate with colleagues south of the border and another country, I think, Wales, so we do need to think about how we join these things up. We're also working on sustainable procurement in FHE. Again, sector-specific guidance is really useful. Some of the guidance that is out there is a bit generic, and we are all very individual institutions, and we do just need to make these sector-specific links. I think the topic support network for ESD that's coming out of CASPA might be something that's particularly useful to this group. We've got, we're relaunching our website shortly, which has been a clunky tool, to say the least, in the last few years, but is, I'm told, going to be all singing and all dancing when it is relaunched. And part of that is going to be a fairly substantial resource bank. I know that Heather with HEA is going to be working on a HEA section to that, but there will be loads of resources, tools, forums, and ways to engage and network and continue this kind of link that we need with each other. So please do have a look in the next couple of weeks. Speaking about membership, obviously, member-led organisation, it does mean that there's a cost attached, and institutions do pay to become members, but the institution is the member, not the individual. So if the institution has an active member that's in the estates department, you may not know that your institution is actually a member, and you can tap into services that are perhaps on the curriculum side, and you've been unaware that you've been able to do that. I spoke to two people at the conference, at our annual conference this year, from the same institution who had no idea that the other was there, one from the curriculum side and one from the estate side. There's certainly a message there. So I would urge you, I've left some newsletters on the side, pick that up. If you're not sure that your institution is a member, and you think that there will be some value in finding out whether you are or not, you can certainly contact the office and they will let you know. Add your name to the gist mails, etc. Make sure you do get copies of the newsletter. It is basically a signposting, networking, resource type organisation that we are. So if you've got anything, comes to these events, obviously usually have a presentation, but I'm asked, if anyone's doing anything fantastic, can you make sure that you pass the information to the office so that you can get them to write an article? There are loads of people here that I'm absolutely convinced are doing fantastic things in their own institution. If you want to share that, I think the message that I've taken from today is that there are lots of people working in these individual disciplines that very rarely speak to each other. Now I teach gamekeepers on a Monday and florists on a Thursday, so I can't quite see how that functions, and perhaps it doesn't always. So share, if you've got stuff that's going on that's working for you, I would encourage you to make contact and make use of the resources that there are to share that information with other people. I know we're short of time, so I'm just going to short. We are taking key roles in contributing to various strategies and working with key partners to move forward with various policies and strategies. And we talked about who's doing what nationally, so I don't want to dwell on that too much, but we're obviously linking with HEA, trying to work with the funding councils, which is proving to be a very important move. But we're also working with the UN Decade, to try and make sure that the things that we're doing, again, are joined up. It's hammering home a point, but I think it is key that we do need to be not just working in our own institutions. I will say if you want any more information, it's on the screen with this one. So please do pick up the newsletter. I think I'll collect it.
You can put your presentation on the web.
Yes, okay.
So you can actually see what it would have been.
I think we're roughly around the 3:25 now. Would it be useful just to have a few questions items of discussion now? And we'll also have a coffee and tea available afterwards. Does anyone have any particular points to ask if they want to add with anybody who's spoken today, or just generally?
Yeah, I'm thinking about encouraging change in institutions, and really the answer to the institution is what's in it for us. The University of Edinburgh, we've done all sorts of things, but it's because there have been individuals who have been committed, either staff or students, to do it. It has not been because the principal of the university has said, the Scottish Funding Council has got on to me and has said that we must do this sort of things. And the same with lots of other things, this idea, well, we'll fund these projects, but a lot of people are doing them anyway. And it shouldn't be, well, we'll do it if we get the funding. There should be part of it. And it's actually changing a mindset here. And financial levers are incredibly powerful in this sort of thing. We're about to devolve our power budgets to individual buildings, which will cause a fairly major change in behaviour. But the feedbacks are pretty clunky in many of these sorts of things. And some of the things take a long time to happen. Okay, impact on the students we get, but it won't be this year. We'll get the research assessment exercise out of the way first, and then if we have time, we'll do these sorts of things. So it needs a very clear message from above, to help those people in many institutions who are trying to do these things and often finding their heads against brick walls at the moment.
I was just going to make largely the same point in terms of getting the recalcitrant universities to do the project, the seminars, and so on. The interested people turn up. But when you're dealing with senior management that isn't particularly keen, you're really going to need pressure from somebody, and the funding council is the body that's in the position to do it. Whether it becomes a requirement and element of some of the grants, or even some of the statistical returns. If bodies had to report on things, somebody in the university administration has to take an interest in finding out what's going on. That could often be a crucial first step in actually getting them to think about it. It gets on the agenda because somebody says, well, I had to do that so-and-so for the funding council, but by the way, I found out this and so on. So without necessarily full pressure of it being part of the funding system, requiring information and so on can be a way of getting university administrations to take these things more seriously.
Given the urgency of actually doing something rather than just talking about it, I'm really quite struck that we're not seeing any. My interest is around in master's degrees. We're on a MSc in human ecology, essentially personal development for sustainability and social justice. But we're not seeing any signs of funding for scholarships to support students, doing that sort of work. We see adverts in Scotsman or whatever for other master's programs to do computer stuff for developing the gaming industry or something, but not for the things that actually really matter. I know if we want to live in a virtual world, perhaps you do need more gaming technologists. But I just wonder, are we going to see that sort of some sort of shift or change in funding there? I feel, students coming to me saying, we want to do your course, and they're all paying, they're finding £5,000 of their own money to do the course because they feel it's important, in the same way that you're saying individuals in the universities are taking that action. I'm not really sure that's good enough, that they have to do that when other people are getting funding for things which perhaps have less relevance in the bigger picture.
Rainbow Village is well funded in finance.
I think the kind of key thing is that here there's an absence of drivers here to develop things.
Well, there isn't. No, the Minister wrote 3 years ago to the Funding Council saying, please promote education for sustainable. I wish to see tangible evidence that you're promoting it. Now, the difficulty is that probably because of our institutions' reaction to central edicts or guidance or encouragement, the Funding Council has properly and understandably been very reluctant to pass on that message down, except in the most general and gentle way. And I think picking up on a couple of points here already, we've seen colleagues saying, please, can we just be encouraged to do this? What we've seen in the last session in this room here was a tiny wee vignette which the HEA, which Paul Adderley was talking about, which is interesting in itself, but it was like a pebble on the beach. It was like a little vignette about knowledge transfer and sharing it among different disciplines and so on. Very good, very interesting. But there's a tsunami which is 20 feet high approaching this beach at the moment, when, in terms of the climate change agenda, in terms of the social, environmental, economic, ecological challenges going to be facing developed nations in the north in the next decade, possibly, well, is it 8 years that IPCC said we've got to be doing something, we've got to substantially change? Stern says we've got to invest 1%, but there is, there's these, and the thief. Now, the Central Energy Efficiency Fund has been allocated by the outgoing administration £4 million. They're obviously keen that and there is a precedent for a revolving fund. But at the moment, the way the Funding Council has allocated that, now I realise I'm on the state's ground, but has done it so that it must keep its value over the ensuing years. We'll maybe dish some of it out this year, some next year, over the next 3 years. You have to pay interest on it. Where's the sense of urgency? I'm very concerned that actually what the Minister intended was that by the end of this fiscal year, by March, this £4 million would have been invested in the estates to transform the estates. But somewhere the Council and its officers have been probably so cautious that they're doing things at too slow a pace. And I'm concerned that this is not going to be in our interest, in our institution's interests. We've seen examples and heard Roddy and others speak about, and my institution's, as Viren says, is taking a leadership role. But there are 60 institutions in Scotland, and the responsibility we have as a sector is immense in helping to transform Scotland to a sustainable society. Reorientating, getting a different understanding about our place in the world, and so on. And I just don't see that. And I'm a little concerned, looking at way above the UK, that the Funding Councils have parked this issue, this awkward, difficult thing about curriculum, with the HEA, and the HEA needs to rise to the occasion more, I believe, and it needs to really say, look, if we look anywhere else, if we look at North America, there's huge developments being done there. If we look to Sweden, the Swedish government has expected all the institutions to achieve ISO 14001. So there are funded places. It's not just about the estates thing, it's about the number of courses that incorporate sustainable development to be increased, and things like this. Now, it's that sort of thing. I think the sense of urgency is lacking. It's a huge challenge, and but when I'm saying critical things about the council. I can completely understand where they're coming from and the processes. But I think, well, it's a heartfelt personal plea about a sense of urgency.
Well, there's been a few things along my way, so I guess the first thing to say is that we do have a funding model and a relationship with institutions that has evolved since 1992. The direction of travel has been to make the funding model simple, to have fewer specific things in it, to give your principals more autonomy and they respond to the government targets. So the trend has been against people like me micromanaging, giving funding in biscuit tins, taking the autonomy away from you, making you spend decisions for you. I'm not sure there's an appetite amongst your principals to go back on some of that stuff. And equally on things like scholarships. Do you really want a funding council that gets involved in a detailed way in planning? Okay, there's a certain number of professions, like how many teachers do we need, doctors and so on. But do you really want the funding council to get involved in planning how many students? I mean, look down South Learning Skills Council, the way they very detailed level, how many plumbers do we need, this kind of stuff. How much autonomy to colleges down south have those issues? So I'm hearing what you're saying, but if we put these issues out to your principals, I can imagine what they would say as well. I think there are some more powerful drivers in here in terms of responding to student needs, which we put very firmly on the map, in terms of putting students in the driving seat, in terms of what assurance arrangements, and increasingly about how courses are delivered, pedagogical courses. We've already seen two big institutions, St Andrews and Edinburgh, the introduction of new interdisciplinary courses in response to demand from students. So we're very keen. We've done a lot of things both in our quality process and elsewhere with students in the driving seat. And that's a very difficult thing for principals to argue with. It's a market, a response to market. So, these are the kind of ways we've been working. I think that's a bit more powerful than, here's 50 grand in a biscuit tin, which I'm not sure that's going to change the culture. There must be an element which is about people winning the argument with their own management teams. Because if you've lost the argument with your management team and then you get a grant from me that might enable you to take forward a project, what about the rest of the institution? So I'm just reflecting back some of the reactions I would anticipate in putting these issues out. But I did mention some of the particular funding sources we've got coming up about research content and so on, and we will be looking for EMS data and e-mandate data to check on progress and all of that stuff. So some of the funding will have conditions attached, and we will be looking for returns and some of that stuff.
David, a question for you. People in Planet League was a talking point recently. I don't know if you've seen that. People in Planet League talked about this is where
I have, yeah.
Institutions have been ranked according to whatever they're doing or not. Could the Funding Council produce a similar league table with the data you've got? You mentioned EMS and e-mandate. Would you use that data more? I don't know what you do with it now, but I've not seen it published in any sort of robust...
Okay. We collect quite a lot of data. We encourage you to collect quite a lot of data in terms of performance indicators about student success and lots of other factors. We encourage institutions to benchmark how they're doing against their competitors, what else is happening in the marketplace. What we don't do, what we've never done, is publish league tables. And I did read the people in planning stuff, and I read on the HEPI side that there was actually government policy to name shame. Well, it's not been the policy of this council to do that. I'm personally not in favour of league tables. Well, we have a new administration, but I'm not hearing anything that league tables is the route that we want to go down to. What we have done with other surveys is collect data, giving you back your institutional picture and the national picture so you can compare against the national picture, but not comparing against an institution down the road and see who came third and fourth and that kind of stuff. Because I think what happens when you get to some of that stuff is people start to be less honest in the data they're providing. And as soon as you get into that compliance culture, people sending strategies and data that makes them look good, you get away from data being real and honest and useful. So that's my take on league tables.
You're suggesting that institutions might not give you the full truth if there were league tables, but surely this is part of the function of the Funding Council to see how the money is being spent and verify what you're being told.
Absolutely it is, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a reflection on a little bit of this. I mean, I think it's quite telling that there's not one university senior manager from learning and teaching here at the conference today. So I put that on the side. And then I was thinking about the approach which the Academy has been taking, which has been broadly a sort of bottom-up funding academics to undertake research. We've heard a number of the projects. We've also been hearing about some of the whole institutional approaches. For example, there's Bradford, Kingston, Plymouth down south. We have St Andrews up here. And I'm wondering about a role in which we can sort of facilitate that kind of sharing of practice in terms of whole institutional approaches, because I think where it was clear in the workshop on St Andrews that that's worked because it was very much learning and teaching, colleagues working with estates, working with research. It was very holistic, and I guess it would be the same in those English institutions. So I think trying to sort of build opportunities to share experiences at that level would be something that would be helpful. I would be, well, I can tell you now that there is no appetite for league tables. And I think if our colleagues from the University of Scotland were here, they would say the same thing. So I wouldn't try and advocate that, but I think facilitating the kind of opportunities I've just mentioned would be helpful.
We very much welcome, sorry, I think we've run out of time now. Very much welcome you adding anything on your feedback sheets, which are in the folders, on potential future work that the Academy can be involved in, or the EAUC can be involved in, or both. And we'll certainly read those and take those into consideration. We have these events as part of our planning process. There's tea coffee outside. You can continue networking if you wish. Please read the networking sheets. You'll find good people who are interested in similar things as you are. I'd just like to thank, unfortunately, the people who organised the event have just come out. So, but I think it's worth thanking them and all our speakers today again for a very